Yeah, it's just incredible what's coming out of Homa, and I think Chris Nakamoto actually made the point earlier that there are parts farther toward the coast that we haven't gotten a whole lot of information out of because they don't have cell phone connectivity. They don't have cameras in that area to be able to send this out. Obviously, this gentleman was able to do so then, but at sunup tomorrow, this is going to be a completely different event. One more video we have. I believe this is from the International Space Station. This shows you just the size of Ida as it's making landfall there here Sunday night. Monday morning at this point, but Sunday whenever this this photo was taken from the space station just shows you how big and powerful this storm was coming into Port Fourchon. I believe, I can't remember the exact time, but
11:55.
Is that right? As a Category 4 storm, and it's still, we're going to get with the weather team here in a moment. It might have been downgraded now to a Category 1. It was a 2 at last check.
For a few days, they thought they might be right in the middle of Hurricane Ida's track, but St. Mary Parish residents missed much of the storm's path.
Victor George from KATC reports tonight from Morgan City.
And we're here in Morgan City where people have told me over and over, we started this coverage on Friday when everything was starting to get ready, and now we're still here, we're here today, and people have told me the same thing over and over. They have this down to a science, but they're not taking any chances.
Every time a band comes, you got to get nervous until it passes, and then if you have the eye wall's over you, then it's really something to be concerned about.
Greg and Crystal Green say they're feeling lucky the hurricane just missed their home in Morgan City. The area seeing some debris in the afternoon, branches and leaves on the roads near downtown. But check out this site on Karen and Chestnut Drive. A tree that must have been 50 or 60 feet tall toppled over a home.
I've been using my height all coverage just to kind of put things into perspective for you guys. I am 6'4", and if I get to really like the worst part of it, like the very peak of this toppled over tree, I mean, it's more powerful than I am in terms of height.
I also caught up with Jordan Steele, who, as Hurricane Ida was making landfall in the southeast area of the state, he was fishing by the bridge.
I feel fine about it. We're all prepared around here. We're always hurricane, precautious, and luckily it turned a little bit, so we're not getting as much of a hit as we expected.
And another thing that I've learned here, this being my first hurricane, is just how quickly things change. One moment you could be standing and you could be all right, and then suddenly you get that kind of sweeping wind gust that can really, really throw you off. Again, that's why it's safe to just do the right thing, stay indoors, and take care of one another. In Morgan City, Victor Georges, KATC TV3.
All right, let's get an update on the progress of Hurricane Ida. Do have a 12 AM advisory. On this advisory, we now have a Cat 1 hurricane, just as it's about to leave our viewing area. Stand by in the northeastern corner of the WBRZ viewing area. Baton Rouge right there, of course. Worst of the weather does seem to be over south of I-12 and I-10. Not from a flooding perspective, but in terms of adding rainfall, and the wind should be starting to alleviate. But we are really highly focused on this I-55 corridor at this time. Ida essentially paralleling that area. So in Livingston and Tangipahoa Parish, St. Helena Parish, southwestern Mississippi, we are going to continue to see some very heavy rain and intense winds. Weakening storm, not a weak storm. We never mistake the two. An 85-mile-per-hour wind still cause a lot of problems. We've seen problems created by gusts over 40 today, so that's always needs to be in perspective. Latest winds, this is as of midnight, I'm checking the clock, 15 minutes ago, so this should be a fairly recent wind report. You like to see that in Baton Rouge, now down below tropical storm force on the max gust at 38-18 sustained. Hammond's offline. We've mentioned all night that we're going to see these stations going offline as they get hammered particularly hard. And something I started kind of harping on closer to the 8 and 9 o'clock hour, that I believe the signature scar from this storm in our viewing area was going to be in Livingston and Tangipahoa Parish, maybe playing out that way with Hammond now offline due to the wind damage at that site. New Orleans, a 55-mile-per-hour gust Still, could we please give New Orleans a little bit of a rest here? And then 46 in Gonzales, where we've been getting reports from Chris Nakamoto this evening. Peak wind gust measured today. This is unchanged from the last time I updated you. Galeano, the big winner, of course. New Orleans, 90 miles per hour, and then 75-mile-per-hour gust in the Gonzales area around 7:35 today. Baton Rouge maxing out. Okay, we're past midnight now, so that's going to be. We need to go back to yesterday to find the max number, because at 12:06 you got that 38-mile-per-hour gust. So we'll adjust that, but we know it was in the 60s up at Metro Airport. Hurricane Ida is pulling away to the northwest. What we are seeing is a little bit of drier air being imparted on the western side of the storm. I think that's why there's been a little bit more of a rapid dry out into areas west of the Mississippi River, and why the flooding hasn't been nearly as substantial on that western side of the storm. But this is something we know from years of experience in southeast Louisiana that almost always impacts our greater on the eastern side of the system. That's how it's played out today and continues into this evening. We'll take a tighter look at southeastern Livingston Parish and southern Tangipahoa Parish at this time. I actually was just reviewing some of the Google Earth satellite images with our news director, who's very familiar with southern Tangipahoa Parish, and we're kind of looking at some of the areas that are likely flooding at this time. There are people there that are likely in some danger. We're talking not major subdivisions or anything like that, but there are many little communities that stretch between Ponchatoula and Killian that may be taking on some water at this time due to advancing surge coming out of the south to the north from Lake Maurepas right there into southeastern Livingston Parish and southern Tangipahoa Parish. Heaviest rain is being dumped between Hammond, Independence, and Amite City at this time. Likely some pretty intense winds in northeastern Livingston Parish into the Albany area and also into Greensburg and Montpelier. And we're going to see this continue to lift up if the I-55 in the coming hour or two as the motion is now due north at night.
The central area, if you know how Lovett Road rides along, we're literally right off of there. And like I said, this is a trailer park community. We're about maybe a couple dozen homes, and this is one that is very right near the end of that street. And as you can see, a tree has fallen, literally split this trailer home in half. And how we heard about this scene, again, just making our routine calls around, trying to check and see how our first responders are responding again as we get into that midnight hour of the night. And speaking with Mr. Derek Glover with the Central Fire Department, he told me about, our first responders.
They're able to help this woman out, and you got to think that this is just one of many scenes like this unfolding. And this is in our viewing area. We've got reports and some very scary reports coming out near the Louisiana coast, where there's some major issues and still some flooding. Thank goodness there's not a lot of flooding there. I don't see very much high water, but I do see them having to bring in extra chainsaws to, I guess, cut that tree up.
Yeah, that is correct. Now, that has been the saving grace that I can say, is that as far as high water levels, that isn't a concern right now. But as you just stated, and you can hear the chainsaws revving up, they are bringing all different types of equipment. They are actively working. And I mean, if you can just get a solid count, you can see just how many people are out here right now trying to help in any type of way possible. I mean, I'm talking about maybe close to 12 of our boldest and bravest right now trying to help this woman in any way possible.
Perry, thank you. We want to, if we can, bring in our Jeff Morrow to kind of give us an idea. So obviously the challenge that will continue no matter where rescues are happening, the challenge is going to be the conditions on the ground as we move through the night and into the morning that our first responders are going to face. Obviously, some crews cannot get out until conditions improve, and that's going to be more of a problem, particularly to our south. But even here, Jeff, what are the weather conditions right now, and what are going to be the challenges on that end?
See,
one of the issues that we're dealing with is the persistency of the wind. So think of it as just a gradual push. It's just you're pushing, and then you're pushing, and then you're pushing until finally topples over. So we're getting a persistent wind, which is going to cause things to gradually weaken in terms of the root structure in some of these trees. And so that's what we're going to be contending with as we move through the rest of the evening and overnight, because the winds are still going to stay elevated. They may not be hurricane force here in the Baton Rouge metro area, including around Central, but just to the east of that, we are going to be dealing with some of the stronger winds. So for sections around Livingston Parish, Tangipahoa Parish, St. Helena Parish, even into Washington, St. Tammany parishes, we're going to be dealing with the possibility of some of these stronger winds that are going to cause this scene to happen maybe multiple times. And the problem is that it happens in pitch black dark because many of those spots have already lost power. Here's the thing to remember. Keep where you are with the storm in mind, because the wind is going to be blowing from a particular direction. So as the tree comes down, it's going to be coming down in the direction that the wind is coming from. So if you have a home or a mobile home where a tree is on your right-hand side of the house and you have a wind that's going to blow it on top of you, then stay in the left-hand side of your house, sort of a thing. So keep in the back of your mind, all right, if the wind is blowing in this direction because I'm on this side of the circulation of the storm, I need to be away from this room. I need to be away from this wall, if at all possible. Of course, if you're completely surrounded by trees, that complicates the matters. But that's something to keep in mind if you are going to be going to bed tonight, if you are going to be sleeping. Try and position yourself strategically to where you're going to be in a room that may be safer if a tree were to come down, because it will come down in a direction of where the wind is blowing.
Yeah, and I guess to your point, I mean, obviously this tree did not come down in the height of the winds. It didn't come down until, I guess, probably 30 minutes ago or so when someone called 911. So, and that was after the major part of the storm had passed. So, I mean, you know, the winds came through, weakened a lot of those trees, and some of them are just kind of up there by imagination, as my mom used to say.
By imagination, that is that's an apt description to a lot of the tree conditions. And this is kind of, it's eerie to watch, because if you think about it, scenes like this this is obviously in central Louisiana, in the Baton Rouge area, but rescue scenes like this are playing out right now all over the state. So whether it is people trapped in their homes or trapped in a vehicle, we've had some reports of people stuck in a vehicle with trees coming down. Or if you're talking about the LaPlace area, where there are just, if you go through social media right now, the reports coming in from Twitter and all over the place of people begging for rescue due to water conditions and conditions in that area. Some people reporting that they're on the rooftop, which just brings back such a strong imagery. This is a scene that's playing out everywhere. So it's going to be a long night ahead for our first responders. As Jeff mentioned, the challenge is wind is going to be one issue, and it's being very persistent, and that affects your a very large crew out here trying to help out this woman who is trapped in her home.
Harry, if you can hear us, text us Derek's phone number, please. Either me or Liz. We want to get him on the phone and talk to him a little bit about what they're seeing there in Central. So if you can still hear us, if you would, send us that contact information. As we continue to watch this is off of Lovett Road in a trailer community right there, trailer park in Central. Obviously, it happened within the last little bit, not in the height of the storm. So the tree was weakened and kind of weakened by that persistent push of the wind that Jeff was talking about. We're going to continue to monitor that. Our Jeff Morrow is standing by, so if we need to come back to this, we will. Guys, stay put. But let's get to Jeff now for an update on our weather forecast and where we stand here at just after midnight, 12:25. Jeff.
Right, so let's give you a sense of the direction of the wind that we're dealing with. Now, we've lost several of our weather stations due to the wind.
in Pike County is over 5,000 without power. Pike County, technically, at least from poweroutage.us, our source information kind of compiles a lot of those reports for us going forward for these areas. It says about 20,000 customers are tracked in Pike County, and we have almost half of those without power. So just putting that out there. And of course, that's where we had that live video from our own Brendan Hall and Barbie Bassett of the church steeple that was waving about. We've got wind gusts of around 40 miles an hour. That hurricane warning's in place there, so higher wind gusts are expected, and half of that county is already out of power. So I do want to pass that along. That's very telling for us for what we can expect again going forward. And then Wilkinson and Walthall counties over 2,000 without power at this time. Let's get another check on those wind gusts right now. It looks like Bude at 44 mile per hour wind gusts at this time. Natchez at 32. Latest update in from Macomb at 37. 21 mile per hour wind gusts in Jackson. 22 in Vicksburg. 26 in Crystal Springs. So we're starting to see this lift off towards the north. Another quick check on radar for you. You see that center of circulation still east of Baton Rouge right now. Look at all of these flash flood warnings. There were several tornado warnings out towards the Gulf Coast. Those are no longer in effect. However, just as quickly as these tropical brief tornadoes form, they can also dissipate, but then form once again, especially with these bands. These are going to be suspect through the rest of the night into tomorrow, not only for Mississippi, heading out towards Alabama as well. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that, especially as that center of circulation continues to work off towards the north. That flash flooding threat, that tornado threat, really going to monopolize along and east of I-55 especially. We'll still have that risk west of I-55 towards the Mississippi River, but on the west side of that center, it's going to be a little bit better off than what we'll see out towards the east. Zooming out a little bit more, I know Dave had mentioned how many watches we have in place at this point. Let's take a look at those right now. So of course we've got the tropical storm warning that's in place for almost our entire area, hurricane warning for our southernmost counties, but we've got the flash flood watch as well. So some spots could see 5 to 10 inches of rain. That's a possibility for us. And you know, those warnings I was showing you not too long ago, these right here, look how close we're talking about. I mean, we're not talking more than 20 miles away from our area at this point. Just south of Pike and Walthall County, we have these warnings in place as this is very slowly working off towards the north. And you see those really heavy bands of rain that are now working through Pike County and Walthall County. And this is going to be a problem for hours to come. So I would imagine as well, flash flooding is also going to be a concern in addition to the power outages we're already seeing out there in some of our southernmost counties. We also have that tornado watch that's going to include the Pine Belt, that includes our southeastern counties. That technically goes until 6 a.m. We may have to see an extension of that. That's certainly a possibility again as this continues to track off towards the north. Even once this storm is inland, that's still going to be a concern on the table. So there's a lot of different impacts that we're tracking, but we're going to have team coverage through the overnight period. Of course, if you do lose power, and I'll continue to check those numbers as well, let you know as those come in, because we're certainly going to see some updates. We'll still be able to give you that coverage not only on air, but also online and on that First Alert Weather app.
And Rachel, right now I want to update you on the latest with tracking Ida. It is a Category 1 hurricane with 85-mile-an-hour sustained winds moving north. At 9 miles an hour, it is now 125 miles to the southwest of Jackson. It will be moving into Mississippi here probably in the next 1, maybe 2 hours tops. Radar continues to show heavy rain is lifting northward now across central and southern portions of our state. And you can see that rain across Pike and Walthall counties. That's where it's heaviest, and the wind is starting to pick up because these are where the bands are located within this system as well. This is a closer look at the radar. This is just east of Baton Rouge. There's not much rain in the Baton Rouge area, but the wind, well, that's a different story. We showed you that tower cam a little while ago from our sister station there, and that continues to blow around in the wind. They're also still getting some rain in New Orleans, but the weather's improving because you can see the drier air is pushing its way in from the south and west. But this is a pretty good swath here of some moderate to heavy rain that is working its way northward, and that's going to continue to be an issue in Pike and Walthall counties, eventually spreading farther north. Now, I know it's raining in Brookhaven. I know it's raining in Prentiss as well. The wind is making that rain look, maybe sound a little heavier, but once we start getting into these bands here, that's where the heaviest rain will be taking place
rule that out being possible as we move deeper into the overnight hours. But the inner core of the system will be moving into the north side of Tangipahoa Parish by 2:30, into the west side of Washington Parish, and then up into our counties in southwestern Mississippi, including Amite, Pike, and Walthall. So the heavier rains moving across the state line just prior to a few hours before sunrise. Main center of circulation where we're going to see the heaviest of the winds making its way across St. Helena Parish up into Amite County by the time we head towards the morning start. So here we are just prior to daybreak at 6 o'clock in the morning. The heavier rain band kind of making its way across sections of southwestern Mississippi with some of that wraparound moisture setting up. But the heavier rains, the feeder bands will be setting up possibly along our extreme coastal communities, which were just hard hit from the storm surge as well as the winds that moved through earlier. And that's going to hamper any type of ability to do any search and rescue operations or potentially do any recovery efforts. So this is going to be the critical thing to watch as we go into the morning start tomorrow, where these feeder bands begin to set up, because they can still set up over populated areas and produce locally heavy rainfall, which could lead to flash flooding. So Futurecast still suggesting we could see some of this wraparound moisture as we move through the morning hours. The main system, main energy, main circulation is expected to be moving into central Mississippi by that point. Here we are at noon on Monday. Things appear to be settled down here in southeast Louisiana, but we'll still keep at least some mention of rain in our forecast through a portion of the afternoon. So the additional rainfall on top of what we've already seen expected to occur potentially just outside the state over into central and southern Mississippi, where those heavier rain bands set up. But you can see even into extreme coastal sections of Louisiana, we're still talking about heavy rainfall. In particular, Lafourche Parish, where we had the landfall, our model is still suggesting an additional 3 to 4 inches of rain on top of what they've already had to contend with and deal with. So the amount of rainfall, in addition to what we've already seen in some of our flash flood warning areas, is going to be on the order of 1, 2, even 3, 4 inches of rain. So we're only going to continue to compound the issue in terms of wet, saturated grounds, which can weaken the root systems of trees. Combine that with the fact that we're still going to be dealing with some persistent wind, especially out of the south for those areas along the I-55 corridor, and that's a recipe for some more of those trees that are going to be coming down, causing power outages, but also potentially causing issues if they fall on a person's home or property. Notice the rainfall amounts here in the metro area appear manageable, and that's the case that we've been watching for with our area rivers as well that lead into Lakes Maurepas, Pontchartrain. So we're talking the Comite and Amite River Basin, reasonable amount of rainfall here. We start looking at the Tangipahoa River, which runs about right here, right along I-55, and now we're talking about seeing some high water. That could certainly be working its way downriver as we go into the next couple of days. So the eastern side of our viewing area, where we have some of those area rivers that lead out into the lakes, that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on in the future for the potential of some of that heavier rainfall that could lead downstream and cause some elevated river levels into the flood stage. So still tracking Ida as it makes progress inland into Mississippi through the day tomorrow. Scattered showers and thunderstorms in the forecast for Tuesday and Wednesday. Sets up a drier weather pattern as we head towards the end of the week into the weekend. We're expecting mainly dry, if not dry weather for the course of the weekend, but those temperatures are still expected to close in on 90 degrees. And so as we get back to getting into a normal sense of life, hopefully not with prolonged power outages, but if we do, we have to take the heat seriously if we're going to be out cleaning up outside, take those breaks and stay hydrated. That's going to be a critical aspect of what we're going to be doing, dealing with. But again, the winds, they're certainly still very strong, especially along the I-55 corridor where we're seeing the main circulation to be. And yeah, we still have that tornado watch that's in effect for eastern sections east of I-55 along the tidal lakes and down into New Orleans, because some of these bands right here can produce some rotation. And you'll notice here towards the end of the animation, we are getting the sense that we are starting to see a few of these wraparound moisture bands beginning to set up within the circulation on the west side. So not out of the question that we could still see some additional rainfall even as we head towards the morning start on our Monday. Greg and Elizabeth, I'll send it back to y'all.
Jeff, thank you. And if you can, in a minute, if you have time, we'd like to zero in on the La Place area because we're getting some new reports out of there. This is video from Lockport, Louisiana, of a roof ripped off. You can see a lot of damage. Oh, and there goes the side of the building as well.
The roof, the side, and a few things from the inside as well. That's insulation pouring out. of that. Wow, just another example of what those winds can do. As we said, it doesn't necessarily take extremely strong hurricane winds or even the sustained winds to cause some damage. Sometimes all it takes is just heavy gusts. And look at that. You can see the ceiling fan on the inside.
Oh, yeah, what's left of it. So just to kind of reset for you guys, it's 12:35. Here's what we're kind of tracking at this very moment. Things have started picking up. We're getting new reports out of LaPlace of some folks trapped, several people in their attic. A Facebook friend of mine was trying to head down to LaPlace, worried about their loved ones there. We're getting many reports as we speak of people trapped in their attics, people trapped on their roofs, trying to be rescued. The Cajun Navy has some people in there, but the conditions were not where they needed to be to get some people safe. We're also going to check in, if we could come back out here to camera 3, we're also going to check in WWL TV. They did a story about that barge that we were telling people where the barges had come loose, I think, in Plaquemines Parish.
Yes, on the Mississippi River, they had reported, I think there were 22 barges that had broken loose at that point, and some difficult situations, I think, at that point. Earlier in the evening, it was the Coast Guard who's responsible for maintaining and basically tying up those barges, and they would have to be responsible and involved in the retrieving of those barges. So we do have, it appears, some update on that situation.
A situation here in St. Bernard Parish that parish leaders are watching very closely. We understand that there are 22 barges that have broken loose and are now in the Mississippi River near mile marker 86. Earlier in the day, we were talking about 2 ferry boats that got loose. Now we're talking about 22 barges that got loose. And just a little while ago, we spoke with the parish emergency operation manager, John Ram, about this situation. John, what can you tell us about the 22 barges in the Mississippi?
Okay, well, this afternoon, President McGinnis